Welcome to Copy Chief Radio. Today's show is a freelancer's journey episode where successful freelancers share the tactical moves that catapulted their careers through the phases of the freelancer's journey. To see all 7 phases, where you are now, and how to move forward, head over to copychief.com/phases. To check out all the Copy Chief Radio episode types, go to copychief.com/CCR. Hey everybody, welcome. It's Kev, and very excited today to talk to Claire Fernan. Claire is relatively new to the copywriting game and having wild success, and has a very interesting came from story. Claire was a pharmacist until recently. So it's always interesting when somebody goes through a whole lot of schooling, makes a big, huge investment in what seems to be fruitful, like solid, permanent career choice, and then wakes up one day like we all did at some point and says, I'm not feeling this. So I'm excited to talk with Claire about how that's looking. What are some of the big changes and sacrifices to decide for yourself that you want some more freedom? And what are some instances of that freedom showing itself? You can find Claire, by the way, and if you're in the health field in particular and looking for a copywriter who really understands the science of your products and how bodies work, and how chemicals work with the bodies and those kinds of things. You're not going to do any better than Claire. Her website is thecopyfarm, PHARM.com. Isn't that great? Thecopyfarm.com to reach Claire. So Claire, thank you so much for spending time with me today. Congratulations on making the big leap.
Thanks. I'm stoked to be here. This is awesome. This is like a dream come true.
Well, we need bigger dreams. We're going to start right there.
Hey, small ones are good too. There's big ones, there's little ones. All dreams are good.
That's right. I'm just kidding. I'm trying to be humble on myself, but I appreciate that. And these are my favorite thing to do because every single person that comes into this industry has a unique way in. And one thing we deal with a lot helping freelancers is helping them make decisions. On these calls, it comes in all kinds of forms, right? Like, I have this great retainer client, but I'm kind of outgrown them. And how do I know it's okay to move on? For you, being a pharmacist, let's just give a little context to what you endure to become a pharmacist.
Oh, yeah. So to become a pharmacist, I went to college for 7 years to earn my doctorate. And then I did 2 years of residency training. So 9 years total of training, over $100,000 in student loan debt. Yeah, so pretty significant amount of time and money. And then I was a glutton for punishment. So after I finished my residency training, I went on to become double board certified. So like as far as pharmacist, I was stacked with credentials, like a disgusting number of letters behind my last name.
And what did it look like? What was your job?
I worked at a pediatric hospital, mostly in the cardiac ICU. So a lot of people, they think of a pharmacist, they think Walgreens slinging pills across the counter. But as a hospital pharmacist, like you're actually up on the inpatient units, you're rounding with the doctors. Every day I'm looking at, what meds the patients are on, their lab values, and looking for ways to optimize their medication therapy. So talking with the doctors, being like, hey, I think we should do this instead of that. So very high pressure, high intense, ICU, pretty high stress level. And especially working with sick kids that, you see the families there, they're in crisis, like very emotionally tolling as well as mentally.
And do you feel like that's part of what led to, was there a burnout? Was that part of what?
Yeah, I think, like in a lot of our coaching calls, you bring up, once you're burnt out, there's no guarantee that you're going to come back. And I think with pharmacy, like I just hit it so hard right away, like getting all these credentials and going above and beyond, like doing this presentation, writing this, writing that. Like I did so much in the beginning of my career, but never really took the time to take care of myself emotionally. As a pharmacist, you go to a code, which you see on TV, like Dr. Blue, the pedals, like the patient is dying. Never really learned the skill set. Like, how do you deal with that? Like when you go home after a really hard day, At first it was like, well, a bottle of wine sounds great.
Yeah.
Not a great
I'll just bring wine in my lunch pail as well.
Yeah. Hey, how about that? Just a little top off. So yeah, I think, the healthcare profession in general, like there isn't a whole lot of great training on how do you deal with the stress? Like how do you go home and be able to put away those difficult patient situations? And I think too, just recognizing early on, like, oh, this is it. Like this is my job. Just never really feeling super passionate about the work, always wanted to do the best for the patient, make sure that like they were getting the best outcomes, but it just didn't like stoke a fire in me. It wasn't like, oh, this is awesome. It was like, okay, I'm doing a good thing. This is cool.
Kind of becomes routine, but also like super high stress routine.
Yeah.
And it's an important point you made. I think everybody became a little more aware of the stress and the pressure and the trauma that frontline workers go through during COVID. People were posting about it, talking about it, because they were like, everybody else was like hiding and they were like out there fighting the fire and seeing people die and having no control over that. It's intense. And do you wonder like, oh, well, maybe if I wouldn't have gone so hardcore into it and been in such a severe, obviously you had choices, like sure you could have wrote your own ticket anywhere in that industry. So did you reconsider just maybe how you're working as a pharmacist?
I've thought about that, but I've always like felt like this little voice inside that was like, you're supposed to be doing something else, Claire. Like there's more to you than the work that you're doing here. And it was very important work, but it was just like, I think there's something else. So I think, maybe had I worked in a different setting, maybe switched up hospitals. Like I just worked at one hospital my entire pharmacist career. Maybe it would have been a slower burn versus, the quick burnout that I had. But yeah, I don't feel like I would have stayed in pharmacy, even if I would have went a different path. It just would have been a different timeline.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. And so, okay, you have this moment, and what was the breaking point where you're like, no, something's got to change? Was it all at once, or was it like a nagging reality?
It was kind of like a slow ramp up, and then it just went, whoo. And it's impossible for me to talk about transitioning out of pharmacy with also, and not talk about like transitioning out of my marriage, because I made two huge life changes at the same time. And it was like train tracks. My marriage was on one track and then the pharmacy career was on the other. And in both, I just felt like I had to be a smaller version of myself. I felt like a caged animal and I felt so trapped. Can't think of like any particular moment that it was like, okay, this is it. I'm done. But it just slowly kind of built over time. And it was just like, you know what? I can't keep doing this. And then it just got to the point where I was like, if I don't do this right now, I don't know that I'm ever going to do either one.
Yeah, right. Oh, man. And that's such a moment where it's like, however that looks to anybody who experiences it, where you're like, I don't know what the change is. I have no idea what's on the other side of this. I just know if I don't do it, I'm going to look back and go, slow boiled myself into this reality and every day's hell. And that's why I always, celebrate freelancers and any entrepreneur, because it's so brave to make that decision. It is so, and people will fight you on it and question it. And you can tell certain people are rooting against you, because if you succeed, that means what's their excuse if they're unhappy for not taking a leap and being daring? And so you'll get even sometimes a subtle resistance from people.
Yeah, totally. And like when I was leaving my pharmacist job, like I wasn't very open about what was going on in my personal life. So a lot of people my ex-husband made good money. So they're like, oh, Claire's retiring. Like, I'm going to go be this kept woman. And they're like, wow, you're so lucky, Claire. I'm like, if you had any clue what I'm going through right now, you would not be calling me lucky at freaking all. So it's just kind of like, oh, that just just had to like take that and like swallow that. Cause I'm like, okay, I don't want to talk about it right now, but like, I am not lucky. Like, this is a very conscious choice. Like, it was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but I'm so happy that I did. Like, I'm so much happier now. It's crazy.
I love it. You always look happy. And it doesn't mean it hasn't been trying, but you do seem to be enjoying yourself. And it makes me so happy. Life is real, and freelancing and entrepreneurship is very real. And so I love those emotional moments we have sometimes in our coaching calls. So why copywriting? How copywriting? And what was the green go sign that it could be copywriting?
Yeah, I first stumbled across copywriting. I was probably like 2014, 2015. I had started writing some more emails at work and people loved them, really responded to them. I also was writing like a newsletter for a marina that I was a member of. And I was like, hey, I'm good at writing. What if I can make some money with writing? And just like Googling, I stumbled across copywriting. And I was like, wow, people get paid to write emails. That is crazy. Like I could totally do that. But at the time, it was just so overwhelming. Like, how do you even get started? How do you find somebody that's going to pay you? So that idea kind of got tabled for a while until summer of 2020. I was talking to a friend. I was just like, oh man, this pharmacy stuff, like it's just dragging me down. She's like, well, you could be a copywriter. Like that's a huge thing right now. And I was like, oh yeah, I've looked into that before. That day, like a couple other things came up about copywriting. And I was like, all right, universe, I'm picking up what you're putting down. And so for whatever reason, at that time, I was just like in the right mental space to go for it. So found a course, bought it, started going through it, doing the work. And then that was in July of 2020. And then in October, I got my first client and it was emails.
Ask any experienced freelancer and they'll tell you that getting started and landing those first few clients, it's the hardest part. If you're struggling to find consistent work, you want to build more confidence in your skills, or you're just starting out in your freelance journey, don't worry. That's exactly why I created Escape Velocity. It's my step-by-step coaching program for how to kickstart a freelance career, attract quality clients, and confidently deliver great work. Let me help you find and close good gigs so you can quickly launch and grow a successful and sustainable freelance writing business. Learn more at copychief.com/EV. Copychief.com/EV. I'll see you there. Like I used to get, literally my hair would stand up on my arm when I was really immersing in copywriting and discovering it. You know, I would just like, that was to me, I actually had a physical sign that I was on track. And I actually had found the second thing in my life that I felt uniquely qualified to be good at. And it screwed up the first one by having no business sense and, you know, chalk it up to a great adventure. And then was fortunate to have the perspective then, okay, I see what I could have done better as a comic, and I'm not going to goof that up as a copywriter. There's actual money to be made here. And I don't have to wait on somebody's magic wand to come by and choose me to make it happen, right? So for you, what would it look like? Did you have to compromise with yourself or like say, okay, like, you know, what were your financial expectations, for instance, because you were obviously doing pretty well as a pharmacist?
Yeah, the golden handcuffs of the pharmacy profession are pretty tight. Copywriting, the big allure is like, you know, all the programs that are like, make 10K in 6 months or every month, whatever, you know, like make 6 figures. It's like, well, I'm already making 6 figures as a pharmacist. So like that marketing didn't quite work with me, but I knew there was a lot of potential. Like I could leave this profession where I'm making very, very good money and I can get back there. So that kind of helped ease some of the anxiety of taking off those golden handcuffs and also just having been very financially responsible for a number of years. Like I got my student loans paid off, had a good amount in savings.
Great.
I knew that I could take a dip and not have any income for a decent amount of time while I built this up. In my head, I always thought that I would like build copywriting up as a side gig. And then once it got to a certain level, then I would leave my pharmacy job. But that didn't happen that way. I just decided one day, you know what? I'm so much happier writing copy than I am being a pharmacist. And I can't go to work and be a pharmacist for one more day and like feel this miserable. So it was a very woo moment. I was like, you know, money is abundant. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
If I feel hard out for money, I can go to Starbucks and sling coffee. Like there's so many ways to make money. Like this should not be what's holding me back. I have the means that I can do this. So it was like a total leap of faith. Like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to make it happen and the abundance will come.
I love that. That is really the leap of faith that we talk about, you know, and it's like, it's always, I'm more conscious of people listening going, yeah, but you don't know my circumstance. And I have felt that way before, you know, and then you hear things like, just do what makes you happy and the rest will figure itself out, or just serve people. And but when you're frustrated and feeling locked down financially, it's very hard to embrace any of those ideas. But I love that you took assessment of, because I know a lot of people also who were like you, like fiscally responsible and like, no, I've worked so hard to have this like safety net. I'm not screwing this up. So I have to protect this at any cost. You know what I mean? So it's all relative what we had to deal with or justify to give in to what we knew we wanted and what was actually going to, fulfill us. Proud of you for doing that. And I love that it's paying off. Let's talk about the work now, because you're up and running. I would put you in phase 3, looking at phase 4. If we look at the freelancer's journey timeline, you've certainly proven the model. You have momentum, and actually, you're at the point where you're having to say no because you're pretty booked up. So what's that look like?
It's really hard to say no, especially because there's so many projects that are like I see out there, and it's just they all look fun, and I just want to have fun with them. But it's really being very honest with myself and being self-aware. Like, what are my limits of my time? I can't write copy 18 hours a day. It's not going to be good copy. I've kind of flirted with burnout and like working too much with copywriting. And I can definitely see like the quality of my writing tanks when I'm tired versus like when I'm in the zone, like it's just popping. It's fun. It's good. So yeah, it's being very selective. Like, why do I want to do this project? Where is it going to get me? And do I have the time? And that's really the question for me that I always have to focus on, because I'm always like, I can do it. I can make it work.
Yeah.
It's right. Like, do you actually have the time, Claire? Let's think about that.
Yeah, well, because we are limited, I think. I think a fair assessment is 3 to 4 hours of like actual creative work a day. I feel like we can sit there and do things and be productive for 8 or more hours a day. But when it comes to the thing that we do, which is like make magic words appear to sell a thing, that's a limited proposition. You got to be real about that.
Yeah, the creative bandwidth is limited. And for me, like part of the reason why I chose to leave my pharmacy job before I had copywriting like up and humming is I did not have any creative bandwidth left after my pharmacist shift. So why now as a freelancer am I going to put myself in the same position where I have nothing left over to be creative? Like it's
exactly. Yeah, that's good. So you have a steady client, basically we could call it like a full-time engagement. You're their writer. You're going to be there for the foreseeable future, but you do have a little space for side projects, which you're enjoying. You're also finding some freedom in your lifestyle. I know that recently you just needed to or wanted to go back to Wisconsin, and you freaking booked a flight and did it.
Yeah, that was like a really cool, like, holy crap, I'm doing it moment. Like, it was Wednesday and I was like, you know what? I want to go see my brother. I want to see my nieces. I want to see my sister-in-law. So I booked a flight that day. And on Friday, I was in Wisconsin with my family, which is absolutely crazy. Like, wow, what freedom. It was awesome.
Don't you love those moments? Travel is unique with that. When you get off a plane and you're somewhere and you're now hugging the people you love or having some great experience, and you're like, oh my God, like I completely changed my perspective on life today by sitting still for a few hours while I traveled through the sky. Why do I limit myself in any regard? You know what I mean? Like flight has that amazing ability to give you new perspective. I always feel that,
Yeah, you get in an air tube and you get hurtled through the sky to a new place. It's awesome. And the fun thing too is I actually love writing copy on airplanes. Like, it's just like such a cool thing. Like, I'm on an airplane and I'm writing. Look at me.
It's also such a great focus, right? Like
totally.
I think it was John Benson. It said that he literally had booked flights before so he could write. Like, it's such a unique circumstances. I think, you could get some white noise headphones and maybe save yourself a few $100, but he was so productive on flights. I've heard him say like he would book flights just to write. I'm with you. And that's why I never get the Wi-Fi on a flight unless it's like a super long flight and I want to watch movies or something. But it's like, no, this is golden time to focus. No one can get me or bother me, or it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's very rare to step away from the internet these days. So to have that little bubble, it's nice.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's talk about, I want to get in some of the tactical, I like these episodes to feel actionable for people who might be in a position where you are. we've talked about kind of solving some good problems, which is saying no is a very good problem to have. And so what kind of advice might you give to somebody? Like, say you had a family member who was wanting to make this leap and caught up in the practicality of it all. Like, how would you tell them, trust yourself, it's going to be okay?
Yeah, I think looking back to like when I had left my job, the biggest thing that was holding me back with copywriting was imposter syndrome. And ultimately, it was like I forgot that I had been a working professional for a decade. Like I had a great set of skills, but I totally forgot them. It's like, I'm a copywriter. I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. So I think the biggest thing, like if you want to make a big change, switch up your career, your job, write down all the skills that you have, then reframe them. I was a pharmacist. I wanted to become a copywriter. So what do I do as a pharmacist that I can use as a copywriter? Because once imposter syndrome hits, like it's so hard to snap out of it. But if you have basically a bank of, I'm awesome, I can do good stuff, just waiting for you. Because when you write that list, like to make the switch, you have to feel some level of confidence. So tap into that energy, I'm freaking awesome on paper. So then when you're like, oh my God, I suck. It's like, oh wait, no, I already wrote down, I'm freaking awesome. Okay, I can do this. Like that's the biggest thing. Like prep yourself against imposter syndrome because it is nasty.
I love that. And it's pervasive and it'll always be there at every level. I always like to remind people, my answer to imposter syndrome, I love what you said. Yours is much more tactical. I say, get used to it. Find your ways to deal with it because it'll be there at every new level. And you'll just have new things to compare yourself to. I love that. Yeah. Guard yourself, prepare yourself for imposter syndrome. So good.
Yeah,
and you're right.
Imposter syndrome prophylactic.
Yeah. I like that. Could be a new lead magnet for you. There you go. And obviously, once you discovered, it's a pretty mighty superpower. The fact that you obviously love your industry and health and alternative health, and you're very healthy and helping other people be inspired to be healthy, all really matches up nicely with an industry where there's a great need for copy talent. So you've got the expertise. And then as your experience as a copywriter continues to grow, it's only going to open more opportunities.
Yeah. It's so funny because people are like, oh, you're a pharmacist and you're a copywriter. Like, that's so unique. Like, that's so awesome. Like you have such a great USP. I'm like, okay, cool. Can you tell me what it is? Because I didn't get, it took me so long to get that, oh, these two things are really great together. I just, the imposter syndrome, I was just totally blinded to what I could do. And now I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I love the Copy Farm, perfect name for your website. And I love it all. So thank you, Claire, so much for spending time with us, sharing your story so openly. I know it's going to inspire a lot of people. So Claire is not exactly available, but doesn't mean you shouldn't be on her list and on her site and seeing all that she's learning, because like every great and generous copywriter, she will be showing her work, showing you what's working in the work she is doing. So go over to the Copy Farm, PHARM.com, and get in Claire's world. Thank you, Claire. We'll be talking soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/copychiefradio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. Copychief.com/CCR.